Hello and welcome to Writer Showcase number 147. I am your host, Lord Captain Commander Dunn, and I'm just going to be bringing in some couple of the regulars, starting with Mr. Valeria.
Why so?
Indeed. And then we have Carl Sailor bringing up the rear.
Winter Soldier really was one of the best MCU films. It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would agree.
All right.
Sorry, you lot. Just got a delivery.
No worries.
No worries. No worries. So if you're working through your delivery, does that mean I'm going to start us off today?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So, if we recall from last week, I did the first half of Chapter 35, Bread and Roses. And in that half, Shenna went off to Mudtown to go pick up Iseldra to have her come back and start doing the garden in her new apartment. And now she's just got ambushed by Elira, who wants to invite her up to dinner. And we will resume from here. Shenna drew in a deep breath as the elevation chamber doors closed, preparing herself for the ordeal to come like a prisoner preparing for the chopping block. She managed to put off Elira's offer once already on the night she'd moved in, but this time she was trapped. At least once this evening was over, it would no longer be looming over her head. If she had to suffer, best to simply swing the axe and have it done with, so to speak. I think the stairs would be faster, Shenna remarked, as the elevation chamber slowly plodded up to the next floor. Well, yes, Elira said, and ordinarily I would have opted for the swift and convenient choice, but I'm told it is terribly unbecoming of a noble maiden to use the back stair, reserved for the servants, you see. It sends the wrong message, or so I'm told. I suppose that makes sense, Shenna said as the door opened again. The inside of Elira's apartment was a completely different world. Soft carpets covered the stone floors, displaying elaborate patterns and vibrant colors that were matched in turn by tapestries hanging on the walls. The furniture was just as magnificent. Finely upholstered chairs, portraits mounted upon the walls between the tapestries, brightly polished brass lamps, low tables with legs carved in elegant swirling forms and lacquered into a dark, luxurious hue. Lamps blazed pure white light in each corner of each room, and throughout all the sweet-smelling aroma of fine incense lingered in the air like a delicious memory. Welcome to my apartment, Elira said, as the two of them stepped out of the elevation chamber. It's hardly the Shandaval Palace back in Lirin, but we make do as best we can here. Now then, I must first introduce you to my companion and kinswoman. Shenna followed Elira into a side chamber, where a woman in a magnificent gown of breathtaking blue velvet sat observing her appearance in a small looking-glass, as a pair of humbly clad maidservants went about fixing her golden blonde hair into a delicate braid. The maidservant stepped back, and after scrutinizing her reflection for a moment longer, the woman nodded and rose gracefully from her seat. She appeared to be of an even age with Iseldra, or thereabouts, and she had the look of Elira's youthful prettiness ripened into the proud, elegant beauty of womanhood. Shenna, Elira began, this is... But a raised hand from the woman stopped Elira in mid-sentence. I have the pleasure to be Teresine She Quarneth Lai Shandaval, bird of great beauty of Lirin and Parna, the woman announced in a voice as clear as a silver bell. "And who have I the pleasure of addressing?" "I have the pleasure to be Shenna," Shenna said, bowing deeply. "Is that all?" Terracine said after a moment. "No clan titles, nor true name, nor habitationals, just a single name?" "Yes," Shenna stammered, but quickly bowed again and added, "But it is an honor to stand in your presence, Lady Bird of great beauty." That was how it was done, wasn't it? It had been some time since Shenna had seen Lysandra do something like that in the Magisterium refectory. Terracine stared for a moment before nodding slowly. "Yes, I'm sure it is," she said. "Now then, shall we proceed to the dining chamber?" "Yes, do let's," Elira said, and delicately took Shenna by the arm to lead her into the next chamber. "Did I get the greeting right?" Shenna whispered to Elira. "Well, it's actually blessing, not honor," Elira whispered back. "And you're really supposed to curtsy, not bow. But this is hardly an occasion of high formality, and you're clearly making the effort, so I think we can afford to be charitable. Don't fret, you're doing marvelously so far." There were, in fact, 2 dining chambers. The nearest one lay empty for the moment, a precaution against entertaining large gatherings, so Elira explained, though they had not yet had need of it in this apartment. In the second dining chamber there stood a long table set for 3 places, 2 on each end and 1 in the middle, facing toward the inner balcony. Elira indicated for Shenna to take the farthest chair, but frantically gestured for her to stop when she began pulling out the chair for herself. Both Elira and Terracine stood waiting for the servants to handle that sort of lowly task. "If you're ever at a loss," Elira whispered, "just follow as I do." Once all 3 women were seated, the servants brought out a trio of crystal glasses for each eater, and a pair of wine bottles. "Which vintage do you fancy for tonight?" Elira asked. "The Sheth 463 or the Huar 468? "Best to go with the 63, Terracine said. "It is unbecoming of a noble maiden to taste of a vintage younger than herself." "Is that so?" Shenna said as the servants poured the wine. "It must be immensely difficult to properly plan ahead for that sort of arrangement." "Not especially," Terracine remarked, picking up her glass and gently swirling the blood-dark liquid about beneath her nose. "Not for those with the means, at least." "Oh, that!" Elira laughed. "A charming little superstition, don't you think? And useful, too. It is said that it teaches the discipline of moderation, and reminds us all to make continual preparation for those generations yet to be born, the better to preserve the line of nobility across the centuries, you see." "I suppose so." Shenna raised her glass and was about to down her small portion of wine in a single swig when she realized that neither Elira nor Terracine had yet taken a sip of their own wine. Shenna lowered her glass and waited for one of the others to take the first drink. She was still waiting when the first servants brought out the first course, a small leafy salad dressed in oil of olives and thick sweet vinegar. "Just to lay the foundation in the stomach, you see," Elira said. "It softens the impact of the heavier courses to come later." As the servant set down her plate, Shenna noticed that there were 3 different-sized forks before her. A quick glance toward Elira told her to use the smallest fork, and to make a few delicate dabs at her lips with her napkin after each 2 bites. How could that girl be so relaxed in a setting like this? Shenna tried to emulate Elira's air of calm self-possession, but it was no easy feat, especially with Terracine constantly watching her from across the long table like a jealous little spider. "Why don't you tell us about your work with the Angara Consortium?" Elira suggested. "I'm sure we'd all be most fascinated to hear about it." Shenna began explaining her work, immensely grateful for any way to break the terrible silence. She tried to keep to basic concepts, avoiding needless details and technicalities wherever possible, but offered up ready explanations whenever Elira asked for them. Terracine nodded along and muttered the occasional, "Really?" or "Is that so?" but otherwise remained silent. "A most fascinating field of study, is it not?" Elira said as the servants removed the empty salad plates. "And quite lucrative as well," Why, when Shenna and I were in Lakeshore to furnish her apartment, she had a full 28 lath in her possession. 28! Just fancy. Elira laughed. At this rate, I shall soon be costing myself upon her charity, like to a beggaress. Terrasine's face wrinkled at that last remark as though she had caught a waft of some vile and unpleasant stench. The second course was a light soup, sweetened with blended spices and garnished with leaves of fresh parsley. This is why the salad has to come first, you see, Elira explained. Can't have all that liquids just sloshing about in the belly now, can we? The soup was quickly followed by a course of poached fish, which was followed in turn by a second glass of wine. From where exactly did you say our little friend comes? Terracine asked after a time. She has the sound of one who has been long labouring to shed an uncouth accent. Shenna hails from a province known as Riverwatch, Elira said. Somewhere along the Red River, I believe. I've not yet been there myself, but I'm told it's quite a lucrative and wealthy district. Truly? Terracine took a shallow sip of wine. If it was indeed so rich, perhaps she is planning to return? I imagine the comforts of home must be calling out to her. Oh, I shouldn't think so, Elira said. Shenna was wasted upon that uncultured rabble. Money can fetch luxuries easily enough, but refinement? Why, that's hardly something that can be purchased in the marketplace for a shem or two now, is it? Indeed it is not, Terracine said, making a pointed sideways glance at Shenna. Oh, in any case, the locals were terribly jealous of Shenna, Elira continued. A miserable little life they made for her there, full of dreariness and drudgery. Why, they even tried to have her head chopped off at one point. Did they now? Terracine said, sounding entirely too pleased with the thought of Shenna's head on the chopping block. Oh, yes, indeed, a dreadful affair, Elira went on. But our Shenna's a clever one. She gave the headsman the slip at the last moment, and so in time made her way here to Accra. A magnificent tale, worthy of an opera, don't you think? Yes, of course, Terracine grumbled into her wine glass. Shenna was about to raise the issue of Terracine's attitude when the fourth and principal course arrived. A steaming bowl of a thick stew with chunks of meat floating in it. The aroma was both softly sweet and thickly savory, a contrast unlike anything Shenna had ever smelled before, and yet it seemed strangely familiar. What is this? She asked. Rose petal stew, of course, Terracine said. Shenna blinked. Rose petal stew? It certainly explained one half of the sensory paradox that was the aroma, but it was still a bizarre thing to put in a stew. How had anyone even thought of this in the first place? A marvelous dish, is it not? Elira said between two delicate mouthfuls. It was Terracine who made the suggestion, in fact. One of your favorites, is it not? Shenna took a careful bite of the stew. It tasted odd. Edible, certainly, and clearly made with great skill and quite overwhelmingly rich, but like no flavor combination that would have ever occurred to Shenna. I wonder where the recipe originates from, she said, determined not to address Terracine directly. Oh, Pana, I should think. They favor rich foods there, or so I'm told, Elira said. Oh, shall we fetch the recipe for you? Shenna keeps a spectacular kitchen, Terracine. You simply must taste the wondrous dishes that she creates. Does she keep no servants to manage such matters for her? Terracine muttered, without looking up from her stew. It's a unique dish, Shenna said, but I shouldn't think that I were poaching the cherished recipe of someone else. There are so many different things to put in a stew, after all. And far better uses for roses, besides. The final course was a light, pillowy pudding or custard with berries and bits of shredded fruit mixed into it. A little sweetness to finish off the evening, Elira said. A reward for finishing the rest of the meal. Where did all this food come from? Shenna asked absently. Why, from the market, of course, Elira said. Though if you wish to be more specific, I'm afraid you'll need to ask the servants. We don't handle that sort of thing ourselves. No, where was it grown? Shenna clarified. It isn't even properly springtime yet. I can't imagine these berries came from any local farm or grove. Nor was this the first time Shenna had seen such blatantly out-of-season foods. She recalled the magnificent feast at Angara's estate several days earlier, and before that the grapes in the magisterium waiting room. Where was Akra getting all this food at such unseasonable times? I'm afraid I know very little of such matters, Elira said. I'm sure it is a terribly fascinating subject, though. Don't you think so, Terracine? Most fascinating, Terracine said, gesturing for one of the maidservants to remove her empty bowl. Elira tried to urge Shenna to remain a little while longer after dinner, to engage in a little light, pleasant conversation. But Shenna gently refused, citing a dreadful amount of work still left for her to manage for the consortium. Elira relented and accompanied Shenna back to the elevation chamber. You were wonderful tonight, Shenna, she said. We must do this again some other time. And Shenna agreed. Sometime when Terracine was out of town, perhaps, or was taken deathly ill. Shenna's apartment looked terribly austere now that she had another point of reference to measure it against. Once money started coming in from her work, she would need to take another trip down to Lakeshore or to Taylor's Landing to address all these present shortcomings. Elira would probably wish to tag along as well, and Shenna would welcome her keen eye for quality and refinement, as well as her present company. She sighed at the thought. Despite mighty efforts to the contrary, she had made a friend out of Elira after all. As Shenna wandered into the kitchen to set out the next morning's breakfast, she noticed the boiled dough ring sitting on the counter, exactly where she'd left it, beside the bottle of oil of olives and garlic. She'd intended it to be a light supper before Elira pulled her away. Still, there was a little room left in her stomach, so why not avail herself of the quick snack before bedtime? Shenna pulled the dough ring open, uncorked the bottle, and dribbled a little oil onto the exposed bread flesh. It was simpler fare by far than the feast she'd just endured, but somehow Shenna found herself savoring it all the more for that very simplicity. Luxury was a marvelous thing, to be sure. But Elira and Terracine had been so long surrounded by that luxury that their senses had dulled to its presence. Well, Elira herself wasn't so bad. At least not when measured against her kinswoman. Perhaps her time among the humble austerity of the magisterium had lent her a touch of perspective that Terracine yet lacked. In the end, some people needed more roses in their lives, while others could do with less roses and a little more bread. And that's that.
Good character stuff. It was very,
Thank you.
very much liked the dynamic of the Terracine.
Yeah, Terracine. It's meant to be too fancy for commoners to pronounce, don't worry.
Terracine. It's not hard to pronounce at all. She's so... How far back did you say her lineage goes?
Yeah. So you remember how I said last time that I was that I had found a way to salvage Elira and to salvage her character? This is how. Like giving her someone else who is demonstrably worse.
Oh, yeah.
Point.
Yes.
Elira is almost a communist by comparison.
Yeah. Well, you know, education does make people more liberal.
Yeah, which is why we should get rid of it.
Yeah, join me in a dozen chapters or so. Anyways.
So Lyra seems to have got over her issue with Athanasia, so maybe she just forgot he existed.
She's ignoring him.
Oh, well, that's...
She's pointedly not looking in his direction. I think I mentioned in an earlier chapter that she had become resigned to his presence.
Yeah, that's very charitable of her, I must say. I would never have tolerated it myself. Of course.
Well, you've tolerated me, and I'm far worse.
All right. You have a point there. Right. You win this time. Is anyone else in the chat? Or is it just me? Oh, actually, you did miss it. I'm going to have to re-listen again. I'm going to have to give it a re-listen later, too, because I'm messing about with groceries. But I think I caught the meat of it.
Yeah. There is a little moment that I considered adding in there about actually having candles on the table, and Shenna would say, why are these candles there? Is something wrong with the lamps? And I couldn't yet figure out something to do that. It just occurred to me like a few hours ago.
Oh,
I'll put that in a later chapter.
Yeah, maybe next time they have a dinner.
Yes, we all know that quote. It's supposed to be a Thomas Edison quote where he says, "We will make electricity so cheap that only the rich will burn candles."
Well, it didn't quite work, but I guess it sort of did.
Yeah. Yankee Candle kind of screwed that up, didn't they?
Bother.
Yeah. There's a Yankee Candle warehouse right up the river from me.
Cool.
Anyhow, I believe you're next, Supreme Master.
That's the spirit. Okay. Well, as you may or may not remember, last time I finished a bit about the Emperor Kwekwe being tyrannical and being debauched and being sick, or ill rather. Well, sick too. And I've moved on to another bit where we have a couple of sort of new characters who have only appeared briefly before, and that was years ago, so you wouldn't remember them. And they're the grandsons of the Emperor, Pako'e and Mbawa. And Mbawa is hanging out in the library, and Pako'e has come to bully him. But then he gets interrupted in the bullying by a messenger. And I hope this is all reasonably clear. And we resume. Mercifully, from Mbawa's point of view, a messenger in red entered at this juncture and knelt on the floor, holding a letter in a red envelope. Even Pako'e knew that these envelopes were only used for the most vital communications, or for any communications from Exalted. Exalted Garawada Bemerumi, Garaji and Red Minister to Exalted, requests the honor of glorious presences on a matter of the utmost importance, said the messenger. The request was, of course, a polite formality. Requests from the Garaji were not to be refused save by Exalted himself. I'll come, said Mbawa. He wondered what the Garaji wanted. Perhaps he wanted to invite the princes to observe the Imperial Council of Ministers, which might be interesting and would certainly be a pleasant change from being harassed by Pako'e. It would be highly unusual for Garawada Bemwerumi to take the least interest in Mbawa's education, though. Glorious, I don't have to, said Pako'e, just to be obnoxious. I only take orders from Exalted, so you can't make me. Actually, I can, said the messenger. I have with me a standing order signed by Exalted himself, decreeing that all requests from the Garaji to princes under the age of discretion must without delay be complied with. That's stupid, said Pakoe, picking his nose. Don't be a fool, glorious brother, said Mbawa. Glorious, you know perfectly well we have to obey, so why not get it over with? In 3 years, Glorious I'll have reached the age of discretion and can do whatever I want. Whatever glorious I want, said Pakoe. Not necessarily, said Mbawa, rolling his eyes again. We're still under Exalted, not to mention the law. Pakoe snorted, then belched again. He didn't think much of the law. If it not incommode glorious ones unduly, said the messenger, lifting the letter again and exhibiting the Garaji's seal. All right, glorious, we're coming, said Pakoe. Keep your fake red hair on. Your red skin dye looks weird. Ignoring this last remark, the messenger escorted the princess to the carriage, which was painted imperial red and had orange and purple trimming, in honor of the 3 aspects of Nyaja. The Chugin Kanwari, that is a bird, had been remade as a goat which had been made to look like a dragon, and that's just as messy as it sounds. Pakoki kept drumming on the sides of the carriage in order to annoy Mbawa, who, unfortunately for Pakoe, had become engrossed in reading an essay by his glorious uncle Juarama on virtue in government, and noticed little else. Presently they reached the imperial palace and were escorted, Mbawa distractedly and Pakoe sullenly, to the room of ministers on the 2nd story. Upon entering the room, Mbawa noticed that the chairs normally reserved for the ministers, with each seat in the color appropriate to the ministry, had been commandeered by his father, Prince Mpu'u, and by various glorious uncles and aunts. Sorry, just editing something there. Glorious uncles and aunts, while the ministers themselves knelt behind their chairs. Indeed, it seemed the entire adult imperial family was there, with the conspicuous exception of Exalted. The seats were placed around an oval table which formed a loop around the imperial box. The loop was broken by a stairway leading up to the box. The box, of course, was empty. Equique never attended a meeting unless an orgy was being held there. The room of ministers seemed more solemn than ever before, and that only partly because the goat-shaped chandelier had each of its many-colored candles lit. It was clear that something very important was going to happen, for the Saranchis had all been kicked out of the room in preparation for the meeting. Mbawa had never seen the room without a bevy of Saranchis cavorting around in it, which was the chief reason why Glorious Father so rarely allowed him or Pakoe to attend meetings there. Speaking of Glorious Father, Mbawa was astonished to see him there, since he had not seen him in public since he, Mpu'u, had been imprisoned. Did Exalted free Father, he wondered? Then he saw that Blessed Malala Ama, who had likewise been imprisoned, was also present, his fake wrinkles, painted on to make him look older, seeming even more fake than usual. Indeed, not only were they present, but they were dressed in their most formal garb. Mpu'u sported a ruby coronet and necklace, whilst Malala Ama was clad in white and wore a pearl tiara. Oh, so Blessed got freed too, I guess. I guess Exalted relented, but why did they invite us? Maybe if I listen, I'll find out something. So he pricked up his ears, but at first the conversation seemed as irrelevant as other. I say, did we have to boot out all the Sarangis. Glorious uncle Equique the younger, father's younger brother, was drawing in a slovenly baritone and flopping his arms over his head helplessly. Glorious Equique was a vacuous fop, albeit a harmless one, and kind to M'Bawa whenever he noticed him, and on top of the usual crimson, gold, and jewels, had somehow got himself up to look like a marsupial goat with platinum horns. He wore red makeup, which he kept applying nervously to his face, that being considered not so much effeminate as imperial. Pakoi kept trying to stifle laughter, and for once, M'Bawa sympathized with him. I fear the circumstances are too grave for that kind of activity, replied Garawala Bemwerumi, bowing his head. Unusually, he actually sounded seriously, not as if he were trying to act seriously. Well, at least the Waka'a bulls are still in the room, observed Equique the younger with a shrug. Juiced good Waka'a, too. He took a pinch and went back to ogling glorious aunt Munululu'u and a rather loose, revealing tissuey gown, especially the jewels, which were rather provocatively placed, and making mindlessly flirtatious comments. The Waka'a is almost as lovely as you, glorious aunt. What? Glorious pious Princess Munululu'u's only response was a rude gesture. Emperor Equique's younger sister, Munululu'u, was around 40, but fancied herself a vamp in her 20s, wearing several colors of makeup and a hairdo the shape where it was almost pornographic. Oh, Keke is trying to flirt with me again. We can't say thought. The mental event occurred in what passed for her brain. I'll ignore him. He's too ugly and not rich enough for me. In addition, of course, she was his aunt. Not that was necessarily a big deal. Although technically a nun, Munululu'u vastly preferred the court to the convent. She found that there was more entertainment there. Not that her convent was terribly strict, as convents went, but having to keep up the appearance of following basic norms was a bore. She dressed and acted as unnunnish as she durst, with the only indication of her monastic vocation being her hairband, which, however, was so encrusted with jewels that any notion of monastic simplicity was thrown right out the window. She turned to her elder sister and giggled sarcastically. Oh, glorious, pious elder sister Baranji, your approach to fashion is so exquisitely original. Pu'u covered his ears. Munululu'u's voice had barely changed since the age of 9 and remained as high and painfully piercing as ever. With that plain white monastic hairband, and no one at court could possibly confuse you with anyone else. But wherever did you get those adorable jewels and gold? And your dress is even more colorful than last time. Munululu'u fancied herself a great wit, and she found it hilarious that Baranji, unlike the others, had no gold or jewels at all and was dressed all in white. Glorious, pious elder princess Baranji, for her part, ignored Munululu'u, piercing voice and all, even more than she ignored everyone else. Emperor Equique's elder sister and a very severe nun, Baranji felt that being summoned from her cloister for anything so worldly as the imperial succession would have been mildly blasphemous, even if the court hadn't been a sinkhole of depravity. She held her chair 4 feet away from everyone else's and spent most of the meeting reading her Florilegium of Aromatic Wisdom and pretending the others weren't there. It would be hard to say exactly what she looked like, since her pure white veil covered most of her face and all of her hair. Let's see. How much longer do I have? see. Okay. Mbawa's father Mpu bore as usual faintly martyred air and was raising his thick, bright red eyebrows, dyed, of course, at, well, nearly everything. Mpu had the misfortune to be seated right next to his middle brother Zende, a backstabbing scoundrel dressed like a Kwekwe the younger, albeit more modestly, in crimson and gold and jewels. His uneven teeth looked not so vaguely like fangs. Zende kept randomly whispering blackmail threats to people. I know how you fixed the meeting, he whispered to a Kwekwe in a sneering tenor, putting a finger next to his eye in a manner he thought very knowing. Oh, as if I didn't have spies watching at all times, murmured Mpu, raising an eyebrow again. Zende made a contemptuous gesture behind his back, while Mpu stared at the chandelier. There was also a chap whom Mbawa didn't recognize, in a red and white striped robe, with a gold and silver coronet. May I ask Great One's name? I do not believe I have met you before. Who cares what his stupid name is? Muttered Akoe. He's no one. Glorious. The stranger rose from his seat and knelt. Mbawa politely motioned for him to sit back down. I have the transcendent honor to be the unworthy keeper for glorious Prince Sarah, who, alas, on account of an unfortunate circumstance, cannot be present. My name is Paranja Bemweo'ea. Prince Saran was a younger brother of Emperor Kwekwe and his keeper, who, conveniently as we shall see, had been chosen by Mpu'u. He had somehow neglected to explain that the unfortunate circumstance was that glorious Prince Saran was homicidally insane, and even the Sandaranian imperial family couldn't quite countenance that. And I believe that will do for now. Don't worry about all these names. You don't need to memorize them. You won't be tested on this later.
Due to unfortunate circumstances, he cannot be with us.
Yes.
What unfortunate circumstances are we talking about?
How unfortunate.
Well, he's homicidally insane.
I see. That is very unfortunate.
Yes.
Also, I think, cameraman, your audio could maybe be a little higher.
Yeah, can't hear you
now?
either.
Oh, let me try something.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
That's better.
Those names, though.
Yeah, I really love the naming convention you got going here.
Yeah, it's very, very unique.
Yeah, I mean, all these names, most of these names I have a meaning for already. Some of them are, it's kind of culturally layered because Sandranian culture is strongly influenced by another country, Terrania. So a lot of the called Terrania. So a lot of the names come from that, but then some of the names are native names, and most of them have some kind of meaning, although I haven't actually figured out the meaning of all of them. Yeah, sorry about the Emperor. Sorry about the Emperor not being here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, we have Pakoe now. We'll have to be content with him for the moment. Let's see. Let's look at the chat. I can't look at the chat for some reason. That's weird. Why can't I move up? Bored off-topic comment. Worst part of the Flash movie is lack of Flash villain. Then just Dr. Alchemy, but not really cameo. That's basically what I was just saying.
He does off-topic nonsense a lot of the time.
Nah, no, I find it very opportune. Let's see, very apropos. Let me see if I can look up the chat. What is Balerian's name? Axula, the absurdly. Shenna accidentally offended the worker girl, and she started throwing hands into her. The Emperor had kids. Yes, he had kids, and he had grandkids. Well, we think he had kids anyway.
Mm.
We think he had kids. I don't actually know if those are his. Probably they are. Probably he hadn't yet. Uh, 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 degenerated quite so much at that point. Yeah, yep. He had kids, and they're all mad. They're all here. And like I say, you don't have to worry about remembering the names.
Fair point.
Yeah, if the names are important enough, they'll be repeated often enough that you'll figure it out.
I think you did a good job of describing a lot of the visuals. I think that like the character work is always very good.
Oh wow, really good.
Yeah, you do a good job of writing your villains. I think that's a very, very good quality of yours.
I have more fun with the villains than with the good guys. When I'm writing the good guys, I'm like, the good guys. I don't know if the good guys are as fun to read as the bad guys are. I think it's because I'm essentially a satirist at heart. So even when I'm trying to write something serious, it keeps turning into satire.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
I agree too.
Yeah, so it is what it is, and I am what I am. So may as well play to your strengths, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very much like definitely kind of a parody of certain political fantasy novels in some ways.
Interesting.
Especially the bad guys. The bad guys are especially very punny.
Yeah. I have a riot writing the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them are even that bad of the Imperial people, but they're all raised in this rarefied environment. It's sort of a wonder they're not worse, considering, actually. Maybe because Equeque didn't actually bring them up very much. maybe that's why in Equeque's children are relatively presumed children are relatively not horrible. Maybe it's because, well, I mean, they're relatively not debauched, because maybe he probably put practically no effort into bringing them up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't have any other feedback. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
Who or what is Borad?
All right, you're up, camera.
Okay, you guys can hear me, right?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I sort of pumped this out rather quickly just to sort of get words on the paper, just writing down my thoughts. So I'm open to all feedback. Frankly, I think this might use some cleaning up, so glad to share it here. Several millennia ago, people would find it odd to live in a world without light. For me, it's pretty normal. Not that I've taken blindness to be a good thing, far from it. I'd have given anything to whatever gods may exist to have eyesight. But for what it's worth, cheap cybernetics don't really help that much. I can sense the world around me, but not to the fullest extent. In all honesty, I don't think I'm missing much. The stars died out long before I was born, long before my parents were born, long before anyone I know was born. Whoever is old enough to have witnessed the stars might as well be a rotting corpse. You may wonder how people reacted. Fear? Wrath? Sadness? I wouldn't know. Most records from before the Veil are lost to time. The coalition's fall from grace only exists in stories, poems, songs, that kind of stuff. Mostly horse shit, whatever a horse even is, or was in this case. Still not sure what they looked like, but that's beside the point. As far back as I could remember, I was coddled. When you're born without eyes, there's almost a collective instinct that something is wrong. Leaving the womb and entering the world has some major expectations. Smell, touch, sound, taste, and most importantly, sight. You can probably imagine how I fared on that front. Not that it was out of the ordinary. Genetic defects like this are quite common in the Void. Though I doubt that would do much to deter the fury of two enraged parents. Never knew my father that well. Dad died when I was a baby. And even with my sound still intact, I could never make out what he would say. Baby problems, I guess. But the tone was always clear. Sometimes frustration, other times anger, occasionally grief, and most notable of all, regret. It's almost as if a part of him wanted something more. Perhaps he expected something more from this marriage. A wife who respected him, a job he'd be happy with, or a son who could, see. It's partly because he always seemed to struggle with work. Mom retired from her family's business to raise me at home, leaving Dad to be the working man of the ship. He got some jobs like delivery pilot, botanist, engineer, and far too many to count considering I was merely a toddler when he died. That happened when I was around 3 or 4? Way too young to remember. All I know is the work got to him. He constantly came home from each successive job with a sound of failure and resignation in his voice, always unable to provide for his deformed son and unhappy wife. Mom wasn't that pleased either, since she could have easily held on to some of her family's help if she hadn't retired this early to raise me. To this day, I have no idea what either saw in each other aside from convenience. Maybe that's why he died, succumbing to the pressure this void creates. Mother, on the other hand, was fairly easier to read. She seemed genuinely sad about my condition. Never quite understood why. I was barely out when my lack of eyes became apparent, most likely the result of whatever celestial malpractice the void contains. Her first impression of me was a creature, not a boy or even a baby of any kind. Why had she already grown so attached to me this quickly? My guess is she always wanted a child of her own. Being raised in a family creates certain expectations. You expect to be the exact same parent as the ones you grew up with, so perhaps she had nothing else she could do. She had no experience raising a child like me or even a child at all. No wonder Dad died. Even when I got my implants, things stayed relatively the same. Seeing without color isn't the same as seeing nothing at all, but I still felt something was missing. I wanted to experience the world in all its magnitudes and embrace whatever I could find. Then again, learning the world didn't have much color in the first place was a bit of an improvement. I'm not going to clamor for a war that's been extinct for thousands of years. Still, there were issues that persisted even with my implants. If there's one thing people like me could understand, it's being coddled, as I mentioned before. Ever since Mom noticed my blindness, she became what I like to call the queen of altruism. I get she wanted me to make sure I lived something akin to a normal life, and for what it's worth, I wasn't totally miserable. I have some fond memories from my time being raised aboard the ship, most notably bedtime fables from before the veil was dropped. Still, I wish I could have had some kind of social life. Never was able to meet friends on the ship due to Mom's worry over mistreatment towards children like me. In the end, I was schooled by my parents, and later, after Dad died, Uncle Frank. Most other kids would be out there in the void, attending public lectures to prepare for job opportunities in the Union. Not me. I was kept in my living quarters, with sustenance brought to me directly from the ship's greenhouse. Whenever we jumped into wormholes for travel, I'd often have to be escorted to cryo chambers for safety. Don't want someone stuck in a wormhole for centuries when the ship arrives on the outside within minutes. Doesn't sound like a big deal, but I don't know. Maybe I wanted time to think. And Frank wasn't much help at all. He clearly loved his sister and wanted to help me, but a part of me wonders how he really felt. Was this how he wanted to spend his life? Acting as the surrogate father to the child of his sister and a man he vehemently despised? Regarding the latter, I never quite pinned down why he hated my father so much. Maybe it was distrust of him being an outsider to the family, or maybe his status as a human rather than an Inani, or maybe just feeling as if he was coming to take his baby sister away. Never can tell, and frankly, I'm not sure I care. When Dad went the way of the dog, Mom followed shortly after. At the end of all things, I was left with Frank and Frank alone. None of us really know how Mom died, but he had his suspicions. He always blamed it on my dad's family. They previously accused Mom of orchestrating Dad's death, which I never quite bought as I got older. Why not just separate amicably? But that's not what mattered. What truly mattered was how Frank felt. You can't trust those humans, You can't trust those humans, Danny. Look out for yourself, Danny. Stay where it's safe, Danny. All he'd do was get hammered on void blood and complain till the heat death of the universe. Well, more accurately, the second heat death of the universe, but still. He tried to protect me, but a piece of my brain felt constrained. I wanted to go out and experience the world for myself. Go to school, fall in love, get a job, retire, make lots of money. But he always saw it as dangerous, mostly due to my blindness and age and the other dangers of the void. So that's where I am now. Apologies if that came across pretty explanatory, but I never was the best writer growing up. Not sure if Mom's stories ever helped. All I know is, for the first time since my birth, I feel like I'm on the right path. After turning 21, I finally found a job. Brand new company that's making its way into the union. Heard quite a bit about its founder and some of its chairmen. Youngest executive in the entire stellar union. Frank doesn't really seem pleased about me going off on my own. Almost reminds me of Mom. Hopefully I can turn him around. Besides, he should be happy. This is a chance for us to finally make things better. If I rise through enough ranks and climb the social ladder, I could be another union legend, like Starlight Industries before. All I gotta do is make it to the top. Frank will probably disapprove anyway, especially since the executive in charge of this company is human. But frankly, I don't give a shit. I'm honestly tired of having to sit through coddling lectures about keeping me safe, even though he can't even feign interest in me as a person. I just want to have something resembling a normal life. I get that void blood addiction can be serious, but having to sit through his drunken tirades while he gives a half-assed educational seminar in the bedroom of a pauper's ship is not how I want to spend the rest of my life. I'm so surprised he hasn't been arrested or even caught with void blood by this point, given the recent prohibition laws instituted by the union. Maybe it'll happen eventually, but not right now. All I can do is do my job to the best of my abilities and hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll come to understand me. But that's expecting a lot from a drunk in the void. And there it is.
A very good start.
Yeah, I like the character stuff in there, and the world building is put in very, very naturally.
I was worried that it would sort of come across like too exposition heavy. That's why I included that one joke from the narrator. Apologies if that came across pretty explanatory, but I was never the best writer growing up.
Ah, so that's what you meant by explanatory. Okay, like exposition-ish.
Expository.
Expository.
Expository. I could probably change that then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that would be better.
Like that's why I'm glad to. So you guys liked it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to see where this goes.
Yeah, it's sort of been a series I showed some early versions of the story on like a prior showcase, but I mostly overhauled most of the plot, changed the main character, and changed the format, and mostly just sort of to try to make it a better story. It's been a story I've been working on for a couple years now. I think thought of it maybe back in 2022. Can't quite remember.
Yeah.
and it's mostly just been sort of in there, and it's sort of like I guess I just really wanted to I guess I really just wanted to do something sci-fi related, and this was the result.
Is this the one? This is the one where the heat death of the universe has happened, and
Yes, and that's yes, and hence why he says the second, or more accurately, the second heat death of the universe. But still, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. And these people aren't human. I can't remember what the other race.
Yeah, they're called Inani, which is another race in this setting. And that was sort of me sort of like throwing that was sort of a way to get across the fact that the narrator isn't really human. He's technically he's half human, since, like I said, his dad is described as human, but his family and the family that he was raised by were like the non-humans.
Cool. And these are the ones I can't remember, because I think there were a bunch of. It's been a while, but I think there were like a bunch of humanoid. They were related to humans, but not exactly humans.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who were developed as a result of the heat death thing.
There's a few races that sort of developed like that. I haven't even gotten into some of the other ones that effectively see black holes as gods, but it's waiting until that's getting too far into this.
Okay.
And so that's generally where I mostly just banged that out because I really wanted to just get to like, let's see, I think I got to like 1,500, that was like 1,500 words. Let me just double check. And yeah, I really just wanted to get to like 1,500 words. So I just banged it out without really like checking for grammar or format. I just really wanted to get something on the page for this. And so there it is. Did I say 15,000 words? I think I may have meant to say 1,500 words.
I think you did say 1,500.
Yeah. Oh, I did. Okay, good.
Yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna it's not like I'm gonna write like 15,000 words that quickly. Not everyone is Brandon Sanderson.
And I wish I could write 15,000 words that quickly.
Yeah, the trouble is, if one did write 15,000 words quickly, they might end up being absolute rubbish. So.
Oh yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I'm probably going to continue writing it. Hopefully, maybe show the next chapter, and just see where this story takes me. Since I have a lot of characters, a lot of story ideas, even more lore, and just really, really cool sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of there being this mythology at the time before the not Big Bang, before the heat death happened.
Yeah, that's what I call it in this story. I call it the veil. That's what characters refer to the heat death as, and that's why I drop words like veil, because that's sort of their terminology for describing when the stars died.
Cool.
Like, like a veil. And the other thing that I also thought was, I'm not sure if you noticed when I mentioned stuff like that he's not sure what horses look like, or saying his dad went the way of the dog, because most animals in this world are extinct to the point where they sort of faded into mythology and legend, like not even just like mythical animals, but like actual real world animals, like fish, dogs, horses, cats, like they're pretty much long gone by this. They basically are viewed the same way we'd view like ancient extinct animals.
Yeah, like dinosaurs or something like that.
Yeah.
Reminds me of when Mistborn, flowers were considered these ancient mythical things that no one had actually seen any.
This does sort of play a role in with one of my characters, but again, that's getting a bit too ahead of myself. So yeah, glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I like the character work. I like the voice of the character is very, very good. I would have to say.
Yeah, the gist was mostly to create, since it took me a while to get Danny right, but the gist want to get across is that he's someone who just he grew up in relative poverty. He wasn't really that well off as a kid. Like the implants he got were pretty cheap. He's someone who, because of that, is enormously ambitious. He wants to become as successful as possible to live the best life he can. Like he wants to be big. He doesn't want to be at the bottom of the social ladder anymore.
The bottom of the social ladder is a bore.
Yeah, he's like a very ambitious person who wants to get to the top.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right. Done. What do you got for us this week then?
Okay, so this is the chapter 13 of Lords of Eternal Night, and the Azrith have been thoroughly defeated by one of the She Queens, have thrown them, and 2 of their number are now dead. And they're trying to flee back to their own territory so that they can make a stand against the enemy army that's likely going to be coming at them soon. So,
I want Mythlocar to give me my money back.
fair enough. We'll get that sorted. It'll probably take you 14 to 16 weeks.
Oh, okay, good.
All right, chapter 13, the Warlord. Kamul watched the Elintian sergeants help their monstrous brethren through several halberd maneuvers, while Farah overlooked another group of sergeants helping the swordsmen. It's been through various practice parries and slashes. He had to pace them, since if he wasn't careful, the creature would be worn out far before he was. Abruptly, the Arterazon dropped down next to him in a swirl of green and black smoke, looking around at the troops arrayed before him in overlapping steel armor. "Soldiers!" One of the sergeants yelled in a guttural voice, causing the recruits to stand to attention. "His Majesty is on the field." For a moment, the king examined the troops, then walked over to Kamul and nodded to the monstrous creatures. "I have given you only a very short time. I'm Kamul, but it seems as though these recruits are progressing extremely well," Arterazon remarked. "I must say I'm impressed. Several slave revolts have taught me to quickly get a group of soldiers ready." Kamul nodded to the sergeants. "It's all about getting a small group of sergeants trained and put over squads of soldiers to make them a fighting force. Many of them seem to have latent fighting abilities, but still unconscious and require some refinement." Arterazon untilted his head and examined Kamul, his pale flesh and dark orange eyes making him look like a ghoul. "It's not just that, is it?" He folded his arms. "Weren't you in the Braithen army?" "I don't like to discuss it." Kamul clenched his fist and looked toward the soldier. "My past isn't relevant. There's only serving Mithrakal's will and defending humanity from the She. Well, I'm just glad you're with us." Arterazon placed his hand on Kamul's shoulder. "You will be my general in the field." Surprised, Kamul turned to look at the king to see if he was serious. Not a hint of humor was in the king's face. Still smiling, Arterazon squeezed Kamul's shoulder. "I have no doubt you will rise high, my friend." Kamul couldn't help letting his eyes flick toward Farah. The Elintian princess fascinated him. He could see that she had more than a little interest in him. Arterazon noticed his gazes shift, then smiled smiled slightly. Your service has already merited that my daughter is within your reach, he promised. Prove yourself one. He cut off as a raven fell from the sky, dropping a note from its beak. Frowning, Arterazon picked it up and unrolled it. Clenching his other fists, the Lintian king proffered the note to K'mul. Read this, he said flatly. K'mul accepted the note and carefully read through it. His eyes narrowed. Kurafir has failed to assault the enemy city, he grunted as Farah walked over to them. Only Amora and Kurafir remain alive out of the 4 that went north. Farah frowned, then accepted the letter. Arterazon didn't wait for it to finish before relaying to the information. He's retreating to the Dark Mouth, one of the 2 fortresses keeping the Shi from coming down from the mountains, especially with the sea on the other side and stretching north as far, only having a set of dangerous ocean paths on the other side. How is the Dark Mouth defended? K'mul asked. I've seen it on a map, but I've only ever heard hearsay in regards to the defenses. High and impassable mountain curtains on either side, forming an uneven U shape. Farah said calmly. There's a large wall at the mouth of the valley, and there are towers scattered all along the curve, with smaller fortresses acting as choke points leading up to the main castle, which is built into the mountain with several spikes along the inside, creating natural defenses to prevent the enemy from encircling your position. There's also passages to secret docks carved into the back, which are blocked by a large set of sea gates. Makes sense. That way you can escape. K'mul nodded. Not now, Arterazon shook his head. We had to collapse the sea gate after moving all the ships to Olyntius to prevent the deep ones from sleeping in. They might have come at that weak point with some of their larger beasts. They just haven't gotten around to focusing on that, Farah said absently. We have a large garrison there, but if Kurafir has brought down the might of the Shi on his head, and if the deep ones come with them, then we'll be attacked on both sides. Then I'll go to hold the line, K'mul offered. Let me prove my worth beyond a shadow of a doubt to you, Your Highness. Your worth has been proven, but if you wish to demonstrate your prowess in a battlefield commander situation, I will not deny you. Arterazon nodded. I want to go with him, Father, Farah put in, folding her arms. We're going to need every sword at the Dark Mouth. Arterazon took a deep breath, then nodded. Go, both of you. He motioned to the both of them. There are horses in the stable that will feed you along the way. Feed you on your way. Take 2 of them. There should be a pair at the Dark Mouth, so Kurafir and Amora don't need it. K'mul nodded, then followed Farah into the shadow world and flew after her to the stables. Take your pick, Farah remarked, walking up to a large black horse with a spiked head guard on his head. This beastie is mine, but all the others are open to being taken by riders. What's so special about these horses? K'mul asked, glancing around at the dark horses, their eyes glowing red as they glared at him. They've been touched by the Umbriel, but due to the fact that they're animals, there's a different effect than what it had on the people of Olyntius. Farah explained, swinging onto into her horse's saddle. Find one, but we should probably do it quickly. Which one is the most vicious? K'mul asked, walking past the stalls. Malfurion. Farah nodded to a large black stallion wearing armor dark as his coat, with curved horns emerging from the forehead of his skull plate. As soon as K'mul drew close, Malfurion snapped at him, but he grabbed onto the beast's reins and placed his hand on its face. There, he said quietly as Malfurion tried to rear, but K'mul easily held his head. You're mine now. K'mul exerted his will on the horse. For a moment it resisted, but it stopped after only a bit of pressure. Dutifully, the horse allowed K'mul to swing onto his back. Well done, Farah tilted her head. How did you do that? Normally it takes a bit longer than that to subdue a shadow mount. I don't know. K'mul shrugged, tapping his heels against the horse's flanks and directing him toward the exit. Perhaps my power is based around wills and physical strength. That does make sense, Farah nodded, then patted her horse, power flowing from her into the animal. Come on, follow me. Abruptly, her horse became wreathed in smoke as he arched out of the door at an impossible speed. Narrowing his eyes, Camille replicated what he'd seen Farah do. Immediately, he shifted into the shadow world, but not completely. Malfurion reared and pawed the air, then galloped after Farah. The two horses shot through the gates, the doors opening rapidly to allow them to thunder through. "Good job," she called as they rushed through the rocks scattered throughout the valley in front of the castle. Black cloak flying around him, Camille caught up to the princess, who'd slowed down to allow him to reach her. "So, to the Darkmouth?" she asked. "No, Braith first," Camille said calmly. "My army is ready for war. Then we should pick up some Olympian knights along the way," Farah nodded. "If they have a common enemy, they'll be able to integrate. See us less as conquerors and more than allies. Who just happen to rule them." Camille chuckled as Malfurions began frisking. "Well, if you win, I think we can give you sovereignty on your own terms, as long as you vow to support us in war against the Shi," Farah offered. "My people are important to me. But there's something else that I want." Camille met her eyes. "And I think you want me too." Farah's black lips quirked in a smile. "You're quite forward, my lord," she said, leaning forward in her saddle. Camille reached over and stroked her cheek, his gauntlet vanishing as his flesh touched hers, causing her eyes to widen. Calmly, he retracted his hand, the gauntlet forming around his fingers. "Well, I was not expecting that." Farah absently touched her cheek, or a dark flush appearing. "You don't go in for that sort of thing." "Well, I want to make sure I didn't lose my chance." Camille tilted his head. "And since you've expressed interest in me, I thought I should show you that I'm interested in you too." Farah's blush deepened, the dark flush contrasted with her pale skin and the veins around her orange eyes. "Well, that was even more unexpected." She nodded toward the west. "Come on, the nearest garrison is that way. We'll grab as many as we can and then move to the fort. And then to Braith to gather my army." Camille nodded toward the east. "And then to Braith," Farah agreed. "And that's it."
Well, he is certainly forward. I like it.
Thank you.
Sort of a. This is like directly after what happened last week, right?
Yep.
Okay. Sort of picking up after the action.
Mithracard is for lovers. But I really think you should write a hand-boiled detective novel.
Hard-boiled detective novel, huh?
No, it says hand-boiled in the chat, so...
Is there a difference between hard-boiled and hand-boiled detective fiction?
Probably.
You know, considering the story I was presented is primarily a mystery, I might try looking into some hard-boiled detective novels.
Yeah, let's see. I mean... Yeah, the thing is that I don't actually know detective novels. The only ones I know are the ones that have been turned into mystery series by the Brits.
Fair. That does sound about right. I think a lot of them are like what is it? Like BBC, Sherlock, stuff like that.
In terms of hard-boiled, what was that one called? The one with that lady detective. What was it called? I've forgotten.
Was it anything like
So like that Agatha Christie, Angela
No.
Lansbury, or
Yeah, this one's. Well, I think this one was post Agatha Christie. This one was more contemporary, and it slipped my mind what it was called. Oh well. I can't remember the lady's name either. Was a detective. So anyway,
okay. I'm not very familiar with that many lady detective fiction other than maybe Nancy Drew.
no, this one was modern. It was like contemporary, like earlier this century, or maybe it was in the 90s.
Can't say I'm familiar. I will.
Yeah. Oh well. It's completely slipped my mind. Oh well. Oh well. Life will go on.
Indeed, life goes on.
Yeah.
Life is full of a veil of tears.
Yes, life is a veil of tears. The world is a veil of tears, I should say. So,
all life is pain. Anyone who tries to tell you otherwise is selling something.
yes, like Mithricord.
I wonder, Valerian, have you seen The Princess Bride by any chance?
No.
You probably would like it.
That was from The Princess Bride.
Yep. It's pretty much one of the most quotable movies of all time. If not the most quotable movie of all time, because inevitably, whenever you watch the film, it devolves into a whole thing where everybody's quoting the movie as the movie goes along.
Yeah, but I guess that one can go on the list with Shrek.
As you wish.
Hot take: The Princess Bride was Shrek before Shrek.
I don't know about that.
That seems pretty reasonable.
Oh. Maybe.
I can definitely see where you're coming from on that.
There's more sincerity in Princess Bride than there is in Shrek.
What could be more sincere than I'm a believer?
I don't know.
Sorry.
Yeah. The good old Monkeys song.
Sung by and then covered by the greatest band in human history, Smash Mouth.
Yep. That song is so old. I think must have been like 3 when that song came out.
Wow.
Yeah, 3 or 4 or something. I don't know, but it's sometime in the 60s, so I can't have been older than 5.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny that this cover is pretty much immortalized by Shrek and is basically the song of Shrek.
And so now it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's iconic now, is it?
Yeah, it's very much iconicized, if that's even a word, as being the Shrek song.
Yeah.
Along with somebody once told me the word it's gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed.
Yeah.
She was the... Yeah, I think it's Rockstar, actually. Yeah.
Don't know
All
that.
Star.
All-Star. Yeah.
That wasn't even written before Shrek. Smash Mouth originally wrote it for a different movie that came out in the 90s, and then they just decided to put it in Shrek years later, and now it's the Shrek song.
Yeah, kinda. Yeah, it's pretty much just the Shreks. It's oh, yeah, we do need to watch The Room.
Oh God, no.
Are you gonna force Trip to do it again?
No, I already have enough material, Ariel, from watching her suffer through The Room one time.
We need other bad movies to watch. I still think we should do a year 2000 double feature. Two awful movies from 2000. You want to know what my choices are?
Yeah, what are they?
God help us.
Battlefield Earth and Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah, this would be awesome.
Oh, God.
Dungeons and Dragons already sounds bad. I haven't even watched it, but I already can tell it's bad.
Yeah, it's
You haven't? Yeah, I will say, Jeremy Irons' performance definitely saves it.
I don't know if it saves it so much as it makes it unbelievably entertaining because he knows exactly what kind of trash he's in and is having a whole lot of fun because he knows very, very well the director is not going to do crap to tell him not to do anything.
And besides, I mean, he just bought a castle. He had to pay for the bloody thing somehow.
Did he actually build a castle? And
Yeah, he bought a castle and he used his paycheck from that movie to pay for it.
that is amazing. Like, fair play to him. That's amazing.
All right. I mean,
If you ever wanted an idea of what fantasy movies were like before before the Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings, watch Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. And then after that, watch Aragon to get an idea of how they were after Lord of the Rings.
the oldest.
They even both have Jeremy Irons.
The oldest fantasy movie I know is The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. I guess that's technically fantasy.
Which the book is definitely worse than the film. The book is pretty bad.
The book's a little disappointing, yeah.
Yeah, I think the main problem with the book is that it has no structure. And
I mean, you can't really judge something that was written way back before the turn of the 20th century.
It actually was. I think it actually was published in 1900.
Yeah,
like it was published like right at the turn of the century.
At the tail end of the 19th century.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can still judge it though.
well, I just mean like just for as a simple example, in The Wizard of Oz, how the wizard appears to each of the companions doesn't make sense for the character of the companions. Like, instead of he appears as a beautiful woman to the scarecrow, I think. Ball of fire to the lion, and a hideous beast to the Tin Man.
Shouldn't like the lion be the one with the hideous beast because his whole like he's the coward, so wouldn't it make more sense to appear as like a hideous monster to the lion, considering like the lion's whole thing is fear?
You could show anything to the lion, he'd still be scared.
Yeah, but
You
then
could lady, he'd still be scared.
yeah, but then we kind of fire is the thing that the scarecrow is most scared of.
I guess it makes sense because that could burn scarecrows.
Yeah, since he is deathly afraid of burning because that's the only thing that can really kill him. So they just went with the giant head deal.
Which I guess simplifies things.
Yeah.
What I remember is that he was adding these these like irrelevant side things like the hammerheads and stuff, and it was like kind of not working. I mean, that works okay with some of the other books, but for some reason it wasn't working in the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, I think part of it was just like just a kind of a weird one for sure. There's not a whole lot of like structure to that book, and the ending is extraordinarily long to an absurd degree.
Yeah, that said, the thing with the movie that I don't entirely like is that they turn it into a dream, or they suggest it's a dream. And also it's interesting that the message of the movie, just stay at home, is like the opposite of what happens in the Oz films. In the Oz books, I mean. The Oz books.
Yeah, especially since like she ends up leaving Kansas to go to Oz permanently and lives there with her Aunt Em and Uncle Henry.
Yeah, they just moved there, and they don't. I don't indicate at all that they miss being back in Kansas. There's no sign of that.
Yeah, because Oz is a wonderland where they don't have to work for their wages.
Yeah, why not?
Oz is a communist utopia. Change my mind.
Are you kidding? It's a monarchy. That is the literal opposite of communism. No, you know what Oz is? It's an isekai.
Yes, that is.
It is an isekai before isekai was a thing.
Technically, if we're counting it, Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, and Narnia are all isekai.
It's not an isekai if you come back.
Yeah, so, yep, believe it or not, these things were not invented by Japanese animators in the 21st century.
Yeah, okay. Wizard of Oz was a plot from Imperial Japan to what? Plant the seeds of weeabooism in human culture before they were even defeated.
Technically speaking,
that's some galaxy brain level.
Perhaps Lord of the Rings was also a plot like this because Tolkien paved the way for big titty elf waifus.
Yeah, what happened was the Japanese wanted to distract us from the war effort, so they funded the Wizard of Oz film on purpose just to do that. So we would be too busy watching that film to be bothered with trying to prevent them from taking over Japan and making death camps and the rest of it. China, I mean.
Sounds about right.
Yep, and then after they were defeated, they figured, now how can we take over the world now? So they figured that the old way hadn't worked, so they're going to try a new method, which is waifus.
Which they did by funding Tolkien to write Lord of the Rings, therefore leading to all of those isekai anime with the hot, big titty elf waifus.
Poor Tolkien, he was also a pawn.
Oh, here's actually Galadriel in Fellowship is best girl, for real, for real. I relate to Gimli crushing on her, lol. Galadriel in the dumbass Amazon show is just WTF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insert line about like rocks thinking or looking up or whatever the fuck he was trying to say.
Yeah.
I'd be glad that I have no context for this.
Yeah, Rings of Power is awful. It's really, really bad.
At least when Hot D is bad, it's bad in interesting ways that we can talk about.
I'd rather
Yeah.
I'd rather watch Dungeons and Dragons than Rings of Power, honestly.
Yeah. It's a dog barks at the moon, but it yeah, that's another line. Like it's basically just a series of unbelievably stupid metaphors.
I feel like you think that was the writers trying to sound like poetic? Like this is how ooh, like this is something Tolkien would have written. Ooh, like this sounds poetic and vaguely deep. Like this.
I don't know.
Do people talk slang in Rings of Power? I don't remember because a lot of the shows these days, people talk weird slang and they say okay up the wazoo and whatnot.
Remember that? I remember something like that being in the Netflix Witcher.
They did have that in Willow.
Willow.
Yeah. Which I was like, I hate. I hated that show more than I hated Rings of Power. I was so irritated by that one.
All I remember is that everyone talked slang. That's all I remember of it.
Yeah, and then they had worm juice as the like this weird meth psychedelic mind control thing, and it was just embarrassing. And Disney was so embarrassed by how badly it performed that they yeeted it off of their servers rather than keep it.
Imagine if Willow gains some sort of cult following later down the road, and people are like, hashtag release Willow season 2 or something.
Oh,
Sure,
that'd be a riot.
Yeah, it will be entirely comprised of the morons on School of Movies who for some reason thought it was good.
Perhaps maybe also with the same type of people who thought Rebel Moon was a good idea.
No, these are actually the opposite political affiliation than Snyder Cut. These, like, for whatever reason, this particular podcast, School of Movies, they're all a bunch of morons who think that The Last Jedi was a good movie, and then we're super disappointed that Rise of Skywalker was one of the worst pieces of trash in existence.
And here's some other Axula discussions. Done. Watch Birdemic for bad movie nights. Trust me, Birdemic is worse than Sharknado somehow.
We've never seen Sharknado, actually.
Which we need to. Yeah, Sharknado's amazing. It's hilarious.
And in regards to to removing Willow, he says, smart move for Disney. Now do the same thing for every live-action remake, please.
Yeah, that would make sense, actually. That would probably be a good choice. They're never going to do it, though.
I feel like Disney they're too prideful to admit when they've failed. Like they're still going along with the MCU, even though it largely, it's like everyone's pretty much at this point hates the MCU.
Oh, Jesus, they're still pumping those things out.
Yeah, they're making less of them
after Endgame and go home.
Like Deadpool and Wolverine.
What more do you need?
Deadpool and Wolverine is the only Marvel movie releasing this year. Since I guess they're now trying to not release too many of them, but it's still not going well because...
Yeah, they've also decided to clean house and throw out a lot of the activists that used to be there, supposedly. There's no actual confirmation for this. So, fingers crossed that there'll be some measure of change in the next few years. And I just hope that, well, Deadpool and Wolverine is very entertaining. It's still kind of stupid and does a lot of character damage. But it's not horrendously awful or unfunny or unpleasant to sit through like Multiverse of Madness or Thor:
Or
Love and Thunder.
or the greatest film ever made, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
I didn't even watch that show.
Are you are you a believer in our Lord and Savior MODOK?
Freaking image is so ridiculously awful.
It's funny. I'll congratulate Marvel on one thing. Congratulations, you're now in the same position the DCEU was once been. Good luck when you get to your Flash level bomb.
They kind of already did with the Marvels.
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
you're probably right. And
then Dial of Destiny was an unmitigated awful disaster.
2023 was their Flash level bomb that entire year.
Yeah.
Ready for the Snow White remake?
Oh, that's gonna bomb really bad.
I'm just waiting for the original to finally get into the public domain.
Yeah, that's gonna be a while though.
Really.
I'm pretty sure the
House of Mouse, we're coming for your shit.
It's been over. I think it's been over 3/4 of a century since.
I think Snow White might enter the public domain the same year as Batman, since they're both 1939.
I mean, it's 95 years, supposedly. I think that's what the new limit is.
I think Disney keeps extending, the government keeps extending the copyright time because Disney lobbies them to do it.
Cassie, a very horrible disservice. Once wholesome fine for his dog got turned into a typical university communist. Yeah.
Now, I know socialism is a charged word and all, but I think we could learn a lot from these ads. I can't even say it with a straight face. It's so
it is really stupid. Yeah.
Well, the word socialism is used in so many different ways. I mean, some people use it to refer to. Some people think that things like Medicaid and all that are socialist. So
no, I definitely agree with you that Medicare is a good thing, especially since I'm actually going to be at least somewhat tangentially working for the Medicare system.
Yeah, Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act. I could go on for quite some time about what life was like before the Affordable Care Act, and it wasn't good. If you had a chronic health condition and you were poor or unemployed and stuff, it was not good.
Oh, for sure. I definitely concur with that.
So I'm kind of all for the welfare state.
Mm-hmm.
Hot take, I know.
No. I'm a big fan of mooching off of other people, off of the government for certain things. That's not a big problem for me.
Honestly, there's plenty of things that just don't work well as far as capitalism go. There's certain things that just cannot be operated for profit. You know, some things are natural monopolies. Some things are, reasonably the realm of the state. Other things just really just need to be under municipal control.
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
Imagine if sewage was privatized.
Oh, that would be a riot.
I know, right?
Yeah, and we saw how and private insurance can be really interesting. Like, you used to have to keep phoning them up. I remember at one point, I had private insurance, and I had diabetes. It was a pre-existing condition, but I had an exemption. But whenever I tried to get them to charge something, try to get them to pay for something, they would send it back to me, and I'd have to phone them and explain to them that I was exempt. I mean, is that not in your records?
Yeah. Okay, well, it was great talking.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Sharing
think we can.
what everyone has to offer.
Yeah, I think that we can call it good.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Just had a phone call.
No worries. Oh man, Treasure Planet, Atlantis. Though, yeah. Why didn't they remake those guys?
Yeah, why not remake Black Cauldron since that movie is terrible?
You could make a version of Black Hole. I do remember that hearing that it is based on a book, so maybe you could just
Yeah.
readapt the book.
Yeah, the book is it's perfectly serviceable, like epic fantasy YA kid book. A book with some really neat little things about leadership and stuff. I think there's some good stuff in there.
Or just Treasure Planet, like for the nostalgia factor.
I-
it's built up
Confession-
enough of a following. Anyways,
Confession: I didn't actually watch Treasure Planet until 2022.
Hey, I got to see it in theaters, so it was
I saw it in theaters.
nice.
It was
I never
good.
saw it at all, so there we are.
So I guess that's it.
Yeah.
Nice job to y'all, and
Thanks.
I shall be heading off until next time.
This is a gloriously triumphant moment in the story.
All right.
Ready? Yeah.
Okay.
Alrighty. Well, we will call it good for today. Adios, friends.
Have a riot.
So long.